Welcome back to MMPH-005 Organizational Development and Change, Block 4 Role of Change Agent, Unit 13 Roles and Skills in Managing Change. We will be covering the introduction, nature of change, key roles in managing change, other forces of change, role of change agents, scanning the environment, diagnosing the organization's capability, organizing for change, the strategy, formulation, a strategy, leveraging structure, leveraging systems, reward systems, systems for career development, communication system, cultural change as a lever, skill required for the role of a change agent, competencies of change agents, cultural change as a lever, skill required for the role of a change agent, competencies of change agents, and role of HRD in managing change. Introduction. Globalization of economies and the resultant competition, liberalization, deregulations, privatization, mergers and acquisition, development of internet and web-based technologies have changed the landscape in which organizations or businesses used to operate in the past. We now know that the speed and the accessibility various throughout the globe, throughout the world, have brought about changes in the organizational paradigm, and the executives have been confronted with unprecedented challenges of change during the past decade. It is important, definitely a challenge before a manager, that today how to manage change in a changing world with the knowledge of traditional, rigid, and static management systems and processes. Organization pass through two kinds of change, one which are generally continuous and incremental, and the other discontinuous and radical. In 1970s, theories relating to change dealt with both social needs and technical efficiencies, giving equal attention to both these aspects. So, this led to the emergence of two approaches, that is, organizational development, which is known as OD, and social technical system theory, STS. This approach was spearheaded by Twist and Emery and gave importance to democratic process in organization, emphasizing teamwork and learning through participative action research. Human relations, OD, STS, TQM, total quality management approaches adopted in different parts of the world strongly, and it was supported incremental rather than transformational changes which occurred in during 1960s and 70s and even in 80s. So the focus of these changes was to remove inefficiencies and dehumanization, which led to low job satisfaction and employee morale in bureaucratic organizations. From 1985 to 1999, there has been an upsurge in international and global competition due to pressure from economic reforms. A large number of organizations found themselves out of alignment with their operating business environment. New technological developments and information technology revolutions left the organizations gapping as their customers shifted their preferences to other types of products and services. The organization soon realized that the approach of incremental change was often inappropriate or not suitable to reposition them strategically. Further, consequently, many organizations during late 1980s and 1990s in the West and in the South, maybe South Asia, started substituting transformational change for incremental changes. And it was realized by the managers of many organizations that their organizations ought to be more flexible to move between the incremental and transformational change to remain aligned with the market conditions and also intra organizational conditions. The key roles in managing change: the consultants. A consultant or a team of consultants usually comes from outside, but they also can be insiders. The consultant's role is that of an expert who have both knowledge and experience in the field in which change is proposed. Now, these are the functions which are performed by generally by the consultants. First is implanting function. Now, what do we mean by implanting function? That means the consultant does not supplant the internal expertise available, but supplements such expertise. So, it is necessary that the consultant carries along with him the various people at different states of the process of organizational change. Then the consultant is able to make change as a part of the organization. Next is transcending function. So there is one advantage or a great advantage of the consultant is that he is actually not bound by the constraints of the organization. He transcends both the ecology of the organization, that is the various units and departments, to be able to take a overall view of the organization, and also transcends the time and people into the future of the organization. This transcending function makes the role of the consultant to be more creative. Next function is alternatives generating function. The consultant is not as much for the working out a specific solution as for helping the organization to develop the capability of evolving any solutions. The consultant does this by generating several alternatives, many alternatives he develops. So he also develops the ability to design interventions and the ways of solving problems. Next function is process facilities function. Here, the consultant is generally or primarily a process facilitator. He has to be perceptive of the reality in the organization. The consultant may see the repercussions of the solutions or situations, and he also helps in developing various roles as the change program proceeds and the change is being implemented in the organization. Next one is shock absorbing function. During the planning of change and making necessary recommendations, some unpleasant feedback may be required to be given to the organization. So, internal people cannot take the risk necessary to make some things explicit. The consultant can take such risk. He can also have some effort to absorb the shock created by the change and can also help the system to confront reality and discuss certain processes which may be quite unpleasant, but without which it may not be possible to move towards the solution. Now, the resource sharing function. The consultants bring with his background the latest knowledge and a wide variety of experience which he actually uses in making the organizational change quite effective. He actually collects such resources and shares them in the in the organization with the internal people so that the knowledge can be utilized for making the change quite effective. Next function is resource building function. The consultant also helps in generating resources within the organization by building necessary expertise as he works with the organization. This does not actually mean that he makes people dependent on him. By sharing this knowledge which he has and the experience and continuously discussing matters with the concerned people, he actually helps in building the internal resources. Next function is self-liquidating function. By building internal expertise and resource, he is working towards withdrawal from the organization and liquidating his roles and indispensability. In many cases, the consultant enjoys the influencing function so much that he continued to play this role in the organization. This is actually bad both for the organization and the consultant. The self liquidating role is very difficult. Once a consultant is successful and effective, he may have the temptation to continue to influence the organizations in their decision making process. So, if the consultant is not perceptive enough and in his eagerness to be helpful, he makes the organization dependent on him and enjoys this dependency, the results may be bad for the organization as well as for the consultant, especially in the long run. Now comes to internal resource persons. These people represent the same expertise as the consultant has, or at least they propose to develop that expertise. In many organizations, these persons are actually called internal resource people, which is also known as IRP, or some as facilitators. So IRPs help in implementing the policies and details of the organizational change as worked out and accepted, and in establishing these in the organization. It is only through the internal resource person that the change becomes a part of the organization. In many cases, jealousy develops when the IRPs become the successful and effective. Their success produce some feeling or some kind of threat in other members of the organization, and this may lead to various prejudices and jealousies. This issue needs to be openly discussed with the concerned person. Enough attention should be paid to the development of IRP. Without such resources, the organizations may not be able to stabilize the changes. Support of the community. The role of the IRP has to be legitimized in the organization. It is necessary for various important roles in the organization to actually sit together and define the roles of IRP. The legitimization process can be accelerated by discussing the role openly in the system rather than only appointing the person in this kind of role by the head of the organization. So, the role analysis technique can be used to clarify and work out the role in details. It is also useful for various members in the organization to project their expectation from such a role. The persons to be selected for such a kind of role should actually have some qualities of functioning as a change agent. There should be enough time for the preparation of the person in this role. Now, the linkage with the consultants. The persons who grow as IRP should have some kind of linkage with several outside consultants. The initial linkage should be with the external consultant associated with the change from the beginning. And the external consultant can help the IRPs through several programs as well as by giving them graduated readings. The linkage can be established by the IRPs becoming members of some professional bodies like the Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Science and the National HRD Network. Stabilization role. It is quite necessary that the role is stabilized in the system through sharing of the success and the failures of this role. The review of IRP's work can be done from time to time by the organization. Professional development. It is necessary to attend and to continuous professional development of the internal OD facilitators. This can be achieved by helping the IRP to attend some advanced programs, become a member of the professional organization, and work with the organization in a helping role. Implementation team. The implementation team consists of a group of people from various departments or areas of the organization who are given different kinds of responsibilities for monitoring, deliberating, and making necessary recommendations from time to time. Such a team ensures proper motivation of people throughout the organization and takes necessary steps for effective implementation. This has been discussed at several places in this block. The following are the main functions of the implementation team, that is, collaboration, building function. The implementation teams help to build collaboration among various sections and departments of the organization for the change program. It should therefore be a real team, every member having respect for the other and collectively thinking and evolving a consensus spirit of consensus spirit in spite of there may be difference of views. So an effective team is one which has representation of various expertise and diverse experiences relevant for the change. And yet, people are prepared to listen to each other and take collective decisions which are not necessarily unanimous or by majority, although enough consensus develops. Gatekeeping function. The implementation teams helps to keep the communication between those who are planning and implementing the change and rest of the organization open. This is done by developing a liaison between the various departments and sections of the organization. Since the team has representatives from such departments and sections, it is able to carry various matters to the department and raise questions there. It similarly carries back some kind of feedback from the department for discussion by the implementing team. Reviewing function. The implementation team then reviews from time to time the progress of the change program and makes necessary adjustment in the program so that the implementation becomes more effective. The reviewing function is both to take the stock as well as to make necessary modifications so that the implementation is not at all hampered. Next is policy formulating function. The implementation team, in the light of a review, makes necessary recommendations and formulate policies to ensure that the program of the change is both effective and smooth. So, this helps in making the change program a more realistic one. Then, chief implementer. Organizational change has to be implemented, and this need not to be done by those who are working in a particular area. In fact, it is better to make the implementation independent of the functional responsibility in an organization. The chief implementer is usually the chairman of the implementation team, but his responsibility is not continued only to the discussion or discussing the problems and making recommendations. He takes the responsibility of monitoring and ensuring of proper implementation also. The main difference between the role of the chief implementer and the implementation team is that a group can never take on the executive responsibility. This can be taken only by an individual, and the group can only help him to perform his functions more effectively in several ways. These are the following functions of this role. First function is monitoring function. So the chief implementer monitors the program of the change. He has to be a tough person, a go-getter, so that he relentlessly keep the program on the schedule. He ensures that the program design has been prepared and the time schedule that has been laid down and followed as well. Diagnostic function. From time to time, the chief implementer looks at the program to find out what is preventing the smooth functioning and progress as planned. So, this is a diagnostic function of the chief implementer where he collects the necessary information through specially designed questionnaires or through interviews and uses them to discuss with the implementation team so that it is able to take necessary action for either modifying the program or for providing any additional input for the proper progress of the program. Executive function. The chief implementer has the responsibility of implementing the program. So this is an executive function which involves not only making recommendation but ensuring that the action is taken or whatever has been decided. He mobilizes the necessary resources and works on implementation of the program. So the chief implementer should be systematic in his approach, and he should have a great concern for systematic planning and going into the details of the various steps planned. At the same time, he should also be quite flexible. If the chief implementer has his own strong views and ideas and finds it difficult to accept other points of the view, he would not make a good implementer. So, in one organization and otherwise, very effective implementers developed by his own prejudices, and this resulted in unintended delay in the implementation of the change. Next is task forces. The task forces are set up for a specific purposes in order to prepare the material, collect information, generate ideas, and take specific responsibility, which is like time bound and which is completed very fast. So there may be many task forces which gets dissolved as soon as a particular task is over. The task forces help in making use of various kinds of expertise and skills available in the organization. Now, this shows the key roles in sequential process of organizational change. So this figure shows the involvement of the outside consultant in implementation of the task may not be useful. It does not mean that the corporate management or the consultants are indifferent to the task or implementation of the recommendations. They are not directly involved in the action, nor do they take the major responsibility for implementation. They provide the necessary climate and support. The figure also includes or indicates the relative involvement in the process of task that is likely to make the role effective at different stages of the change process. So, at the initial phase, these phases actually involvement required in the process is greater than that in the subsequent phases, when gradually more involvement in the task will be possible. When the change process is being started, all roles concerned with it should pay more attention to the process, and if it is properly done, the task becomes quite easier, and towards the end, all the roles can pay attention to the task. Other forces of change. There are a number of other forces of change that affect the organization. First one is the world politics. The organization in recent years have been driven by the market boundaries rather than political boundaries. International politics affects trade and businesses. Countries receive the status of favored nation or sanctions are imposed to them. Economic factors have become the semantic force in a highly divided world today. The managers who would operate at national, international, and global levels need to have knowledge of the products and services that are covered under the World Trade Organization. Technological changes, information and communication technologies have shrunk these distances across countries and organizations. Technology does not refer only to machinery, equipment, and tools. It also is concerned with the information and knowledge as inputs are transformed into outputs. The process of transformation involves a technology. Therefore, the choice of appropriate technology is the key factor for the competitive edge in the new environment. Globalization and government policy. These globalization and liberalization, any organization in any part of the world can manufacture, process, and sell its products or services to any part of the world which is liberalized. The business implications of the globalization are that of a firm that had monopoly in a particular country and now to compete with other international or global firms in terms of quality of products, services, and price. Roles of change agents. Role of change agent is that the external change agent may be in form of alliances, bureaucrats, regulators. The regulatory authorities in the form of government or other autonomous body create policies and maybe develop the alternate sources of energy. So, in the present business environment, organizations are expected to have growth which is socially and environmentally viable and thus sustainable. Internal consultant. As an internal consultant, one needs to monitor and scan external drivers of change. The change agent ought to have a hard look at the company's competitive team or competitive situation, keeping in view its market position, technological trends, and financial performances. Activist, it is also observed that intellectual scientists and the community activists play a vital role in organizational and or in social change. Community activities, Community activists usually take up the causes that affects society at a large and thus are instrumental in bringing about the change. Role of a leader. As leaders, they need to inspire and a shared vision, a clear image of the future to take the people along. To enlist people's cooperation that needs to communicate at the levels of their constituents and speak their language. They also need to inspire trust and people believe that they have their interest at their heart. Now, role of organizational management. One of the roles of initiating change would be that of the management of the organization. As the apex management group and the organizational management can be performed two roles, that is evolving policy and legitimizing change, which can be done by bringing out about policy change or planning or recommending for a plan change. For any effective to be or for any change to be effective, active support of the top management is always essential. It is not only important for the management to have faith in the new policy, but their visible and external support throughout the change process is very necessary. Institutionalizing change. So it becomes important for top or senior management to keep energizing the people with a view to reviving and sustaining their interest in the whole process. It may also involve reopening of a dialogue between the external consultant and the people opposite change. Two factors are extremely important in institutional change. First one, the change efforts or the new approaches having helped in enhancing performance, and the initiative started by the management team is taken forward by the successive management. It has been observed that when a change champion retires, his successors find it very difficult to resist pressures from various quarters, and things come back to the square one. That means here, when it is quite initiative, it is quite it has been observed that when a change, that's thus this process of renewal which started a year or two disappears, and the efforts which has been put is failed miserably. Now, creating a learning organization. So, learning takes place in all organizations, whether consciously or unconsciously. Most organizations learn through single loop learning, which involves identification and rectification of mistakes based on the past experience and existing policies. In contrast, a learning organization adopts double loop learning method, which involves not only detection and correction of errors but also making changes in organizational objectives, policies, and processes so that such errors or mistakes could also be avoided or eliminated in the future. So double loop learning challenges the ineffective traditional assumptions and norms that provides unconventional solutions to the problem for substantive improvements. And learning organizations also develop capability to adapt change. We can take examples of Maruti, Tisco, and Tata Motors, which can be called as learning organizations because they have adapted themselves to the changing business environment. Scanning the environment. The external drivers of change could be market or the customers, shareholders, technology, economy, and the social trends. Learning from the lessons of companies, it is desirable to allow each level of management to scan the environment and act as a source of buying change, which will actually help an organization plan for the change before the change actually overtakes one. As there could be three types of managers. Like first one, those who make change happen. Second one is are those who react to the change, and the third one are those who wonder when the change has happened. So scanning the environment, this is an organizational change where it's been seen that diagnosing organization capability with the strategy coming in people and involving people, system, and structures. The role of agent in managing organizational change, that is to scan the environment, scan the organization, and access and align the capabilities for the change agents. Now, the organizational organizing for change, a strategy. Literature on organizational change indicates that both continuous and discontinuous change forms are part of the organization's life. In the initial stages of the organizational life, change is continuous, incremental, and slow. But thereafter, there are short periods of rapid and transformational change which can be explained with the help of a punctuated equilibrium model which is given below. That is the phase 1, phase 2, how it started with first meeting, then transition, then competition. This is a punctuated equilibrium model. Now, this model actually indicates that an organization goes through two phases. That is, one, a stage characterized by phase of inertia, when there is no progress or slow progress, and a predetermined course of action. Almost halfway, a new insight develops which challenges the inertia patterns, and there is a phase of transition. So this period is marked by focused burst of changes, giving up the old ways and adopting the new perspectives. A second round of inertia follows after transition. So this phase is marked by a new equilibrium or a phase of inertia, which actually, when the change implements get together and accelerate their efforts to complete the work started during the transition period. So this pattern is called the punctuated equilibrium model. So if managers involved in the change implementation can sustain their energy and enthusiasm during the first phase of transition, and the process of change will be greatly expedited. Now, formulating strategy. Organizational strategy will flow the vision of the organization. The vision ought to be relatively constant. However, business strategy need to be aligned with the change in the market. It needs to be quite practical or pragmatic. Though the responsibility of the corporate strategy rests on the CEO, the chief executive officer, he alone actually cannot bring the change. See, the organization and the responsibility for bringing about the change is shared at various levels in the organization. So, leveraging structure, that is, first one is a flat structure, that is the vertical hierarchical structures with traditional organizations which worked well in the stable environment but are unsuitable for situations of dynamic change are being placed with the flat structures. Now customers figure on the top and the segment figure at the bottom, taking the shape of an inverted pyramid. Network organization, the recent focus on total quality and responsiveness to the customers need to be laid quite stress on the horizontal process in an organization, which eventually actually benefits the customer by linking various elements of the customer supply chain. So in this setup, everyone is a customer of someone else. So information technology has created a network organization through telecommuting in which people form teams across the globe. Cellular organization, another way of leveraging structure is to create cells within the organizations. So, a collection of small teams with a high degree of autonomy in what constitute a cellular organization. When a group reaches the size of 50 people, it's formed its own cell, which is responsible for all the aspects of the organization except the payroll. So in this setup, the cell handles everything and there are no central staff department. Leveraging systems, strategic consideration for change in appraisal systems. Appraisal system in 30% of the organization in India had been introduced with a view to controlling the behavior of an employee, using it as a means of giving him rewards, threats, or punishment to make decisions regarding salary increases, etc. The assumptions with which the appraisal systems had been designed context. The organizations are expected to treat their employees as human resources who can contribute and bring about competitive advantage through their competencies. Therefore, the command and control method of appraisal needs to be replaced with feedback, counseling, and mentoring. Considerable thoughts need to be given for changing the appraisal system, movement from systems of annual confidential reports to the open appraisal systems need careful planning. Some of the approaches have been described below, like the strategy of step by step change, strategy of level by level change, and strategy of department by department change. Reward system. It is a kind of positive reinforcement of performance. What is reinforced or rewarded gets produced again. But for deciding the rewards, the measurements of performance assumes a great significance. The simple principle of Skinner's operant conditioning advocates that let the person operate on the environment to get the reinforcement. However, it is to be seen how reward system can be leveraged for change. For deciding this, the following criteria for reward may be kept in the mind, like whether to reward individual performance or group performance, whether to reward soft or hard skills, whether only performance is to be rewarded or the risk taking, the cost, profit, sales, innovation, and efforts, whether rewards recognize one's contribution in cross functional teams, whether the design cafeteria benefit systems or to offer choices to the employees. Systems for career development. In the past, people used to join an organization for the lifetime and wanted their career path to be charted out for growth in the organization. In the changing scenario, neither the employers nor the employees want to commit for such a long period. The following challenges need to be addressed in the changing environment: managing the expectation of the young entrant and how to develop horizontal opportunities for career growth, how to keep the motivation level high in a flat structure with few opportunities for the career advancement, how to place responsibility of individual career development on the employees are to be studied significantly. Communication systems. With the advent of a variety of technologies, organizations have gone through revolutionary communication process ranging from an electronic mail to video conferencing. While the impact of technology on communicating or communication system in organization has been accepted, the challenge faced by the organization is to educate people about the use of sophisticated communication systems. This will be another skill to be mastered by the change agent. Cultural change as a lever. The vision, mission, goals, and objectives of an organization constitute a formal culture. However, attitude, behavioral practices, and norms form the part of the informal organizational culture. Without understanding the and channelizing the energies of individuals and teams, any change brought about by the organization cannot succeed. Cultural change can act as a positive reinforcement, a positive instrument for change. With the liberalization, command and control hierarchy have diminished the diminished, and the changing business environment requires a new set of attitude and behaviors as a genetic code which will actually guide the people to sail through uncharted waters. Skill required for the role of a change agent. Now, the change agents would require the following skills to be able to keep themselves and the organization float in the future, like a sensor of the business environment, vertical to horizontal functioning, leadership at all levels, managers as a catalyst, short time frame horizon, balancing work and personal life, and last one is maximization of information flow. Competencies of change agent, that is, competency is a, what is actually a competency? Competency is an underlying characteristics of a person that results in effective or superior performance. That is given by Boetis, 1982, and the competencies include like knowledge, skills, attitude, traits, value, motives, and it is difficult to draw a line between these. So a skill is used for applications or working for performing a task, satisfying a role, which is a result of a number of visible and invisible competencies. In general, competencies for change engine may be broadly classified into like cognitive competencies, functional competencies, personal effectiveness competencies, and interpersonal competencies. In addition to consulting problem solving competency comprising of all those above mentioned competencies is also essential for the change agent. So each of these competencies have been explained here. Like first one, we will be discussing on the cognitive competencies. Here, in cognitive competencies are required for perceiving and thinking and are again a combination of a number of competencies. For simple explanation, these can be divided into two types of thinking. Like first one is analytical thinking and the conceptual thinking. In analytical thinking, which enables a person to understand a situation by breaking apart into smaller pieces or tracing the implication of a situation in a step by step casual way. It also involves organizing the parts of a problem or situation in a systematic way, making systematic comparisons of different. In conceptual thinking, it actually involves understanding a situation or problem by putting the pieces together and seeing the large picture. So it includes identifying patterns or connection between the situation that are not obviously related and identifying the key or underlying issues in a complex situation. So, in conceptual thinking, the user is creative, conceptuals or inductive reasoning for applying the existing concepts of defining the novel concepts. Functional or technical competencies. These are the skills required to perform effectively a particular discipline, functional or technical area like heat treatment, corrosions, investment analysis, designing a wage and salary administration system, organization development, structural design, etc. So the change agent who is working for identifying or resolving problems must have the necessary knowledge, particularly as problem identifier or the solution provider. So, technical or professional competencies include mastery of a body or a field of job related knowledge and skills, and also motivation to enhance, use, and disseminate work related knowledge to others. So, according to Spencer and Spencer, there are actually four main dimensions of these functional and technical professional competencies. First one is your depth of knowledge and skills, that is, which described in terms of formal educational training, expertise gained through informal studies or working experience. Second one is breadth of knowledge and skills, that is, it is managerial and organizational expertise necessary to manage, coordinate, or integrate diverse people's organizational functions and units for achieving common objectives. Expertise acquisition motive, that is, the efforts to maintain and acquire require the expertise ranging from simple maintenance to extensive efforts to attain mastery in new areas. The personal effectiveness and self management competencies for effectiveness of change management consultants, like the following personal self management skills are quite essential. Like the self control, it is the ability to keep emotions under control and retain and enhance one's effectiveness even when faced with hostility and severe stress. So this competencies is described by the intensity and resulting the scope of control exerted by a person on himself or herself, indicating a wide range of controls ranging from the individual's minimal control of self by avoiding negative actions, that is controlling self in order to improve the situation, to controlling or calming others as well as the own reaction. Next one is your self confidence, where the individual believe in one's own capability to accomplish a task. It also includes the individual's expression of confidence in highly challenging situations, in making decisions, forming opinions, handling failures constructively. So, a positive self concept perpetuates self confidence. Next point is flexibility. This is the ability to adapt to the work very effectively in a variety of situations with different individuals or groups. So, understanding and appreciating opposing and alternative perspectives is on an issue, trying to adapt to an approach in change situations, and readiness to change or accept changes in one's own work environment are very crucial for flexibility. Then comes organizational commitment, where the individual's ability and willingness to align one's own behavior with the organizational needs, priorities, and goals indicate the organizational commitment. Initiative indicates the preference of taking action, doing more than one which is required. Interpersonal competencies, these competencies are essential for dealing with other people effectively. Then comes communication. Communication includes grasping, processing, and articulating thoughts and ideas to convey and use information in a meaningful manner. So, these skills can also be understood and interpreted at different levels. Interpersonal skills understanding, that is for having effective interpersonal relations, a desire and capability to understand other persons is quite essential. Help service orientation, these competencies are oriented towards desire to help and serve others. Influence and impact, these skills help in expressing an intention to persuade, convince, influence, or impress other in order to get what one want to get from the others. And understanding and using the power dynamics, that means this ability is to identify who are the key decision makers and centers of influence, also predicting who will be influencing the situation in a better way. Relationship building, with the help of these competencies a person is able to build and maintain the friendly, warm, trusting relationship with other people. Negotiation, the competency is also is referred as a cluster of traits and competencies and enables where an individual or a group difference opposing wishes. Consulting competencies, these needed to complete the various phases of change project and adapting the consulting role as a need for variety of situation. General skills like self-awareness, understanding motivation, philosophy, ethics, change. Then contracting skills, building a verbal agreement with the client, implementing skills. These skills are quite essential for successfully carrying out a project of a planned change. And maintenance skills, which is a creating a sense of responsibility, passion for a new system of procedures after the change. Now, the role of HRD in managing change. The web based environment has changed the landscape of the training. The HRD, the human resource development professionals, using the web based instructional methodology, can assume the new role of e-trainer and develop new competencies like electronic system skills, technical competencies of research skills, and intellectual competencies of visioning skills, along with retaining and traditional training competencies. Besides the technology based changes, there has been a paradigm shift in the field of training, that is from pedagogical approach to the andragogical approach. That means the training is being, it's a learner centered rather than an instruction centered. So another shift can be observed, that is instructional framework from passive learning to objectivism to constructivism, acquiring a meaning out of experience. So this knowledge has moved from a fixed to flexible, promoting promoting the potential for change rather than being influenced by thinking of information provider. So the trainer is expected to be an expert learner to enhance his existing competencies to be effective in the e environment system. Thank you. So meet you in the next class.